Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Place Prepared. Place Prepared podcast is about manifesting and the law of assumption. This includes success stories, Neville Goddard analysis, manifesting tips, and much more. In this episode, we will be talking about revision and how to use it. I learned revision through Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard explains revision as selecting a different outcome from your past. Essentially, you can pick an event or a series of events and select an outcome that you would have liked to have happened. You construct a scene that implies that things went the way you wanted them to. When you revise something, you are literally changing your past. However, I wouldn't call it changing, but that you are actually in a reality where the event you desired actually happened. So Neville describes revision as a means of forgiveness. It is not necessarily that you are forgiving an individual or an event, but you are forgiving yourself for creating that event. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Neville says, forgiveness is the life of the imagination. The art of living is the art of forgiving. Forgiveness is, in fact, experiencing in imagination the revised version of the day. Experiencing in imagination what you wish you had experienced in the flesh. Every time one really forgives, that is, every time one relives the event as it should have been lived, one is born again. He's describing that every time you revise, it is actually you jumping into a reality where that event actually occurred, hence being born again. Born again in a reality of your choosing. Dr. Joe Dispenza also talks about revision in a scientific way. He says, unhooking from the old self, unhooking from the old memory, and literally reconnecting to a new self. When you unhook one connection from another connection, if every place where one neuron connects to another neuron is a memory, then we could say that the moment you reinvent a new self or become somebody else, you are biologically dismantling the old self. You are no longer in the memory of your old self and be like another lifetime. And people say, well, where does the memory go now? And of course, it is recorded in the soul as wisdom. A memory without emotional charge is called wisdom, and that's the name of the game. So, how do we revise? Neville says, the one requisite is to arouse your attention in a way and to such intensity that you become wholly absorbed in the revised action. It is a most healthy and productive exercise to daily relive the day as you wished you had lived it, revising the scene to make them conform to your ideals. For instance, suppose today's mail brought disappointing news. Revise the letter. Mentally rewrite it and make it conform to the news you wish you had received. Then, in imagination, read the revised letter over and over again. This is the essence of revision, and revision results in repeal. Dr. Joe Dispenza says, the process of changing requires unlearning and relearning. It requires breaking a habit of your old self and reinventing a new self. It requires pruning synaptic connections and sprouting new connections. It requires unmemorizing an emotion in your body and then conditioning the body to a new mind or to a new emotion. It literally means moving from your past into a new future. So the biological model of change says that it is not enough to just think positive. You have to get down to those emotions. People would say, well, you don't want the child to relive the abuse. And I would say, you're absolutely right. Forget about the event. It has nothing to do with the event. Go back to the emotion, and when you can begin to work without emotion and transmit that emotion into an elevated emotional forgiveness for compassion or gratitude, the moment you begin to free the body from the mind, when that begins to happen, the body begins to break free from the past, and the side effects of that liberation is called joy. Because the body is no longer held to the chains of the past, and liberation then begins to lower the volume to the emotional charge, and that's when we begin to see it without the filter of that emotional experience. So they are both describing how to enter a new state where your desire is accomplished. You feel it to be real. I want to go into my personal experience with revision. I used to see revision as a tool to get you into a feeling that it wasn't actually changing your past, but it was just getting you into a new state. Now I know that it is literally changing your past. So with the descriptions of Neville Goddard and Dr. Joe Dispenza, revision to me is how to completely shift into a new state where all the things you want are there. States are all inclusive with their own sets of experiences, attitudes, thoughts, emotions, etc. So when we revise, we enter a new state of being. Now, a lot of the times we look at the 3D to confirm to us that the past actually changed. Maybe you revise a breakup or having won the lottery. In my experience, when you revise something happens that changes the outcome, and over time the memory gets changed. Here's an example. I was talking to a friend and they started being kind of rude. After we finished the conversation, I revised it and thought everything was fine. Then a few hours later, they sent me a message saying that they were looking over the message they sent me and apologized because they didn't realize that it sounded rude. They apologized and that was the end of that. Moving forward to the present, that argument does not exist. It's as if it never happened. To my experience, when you revise, there is something that happens that changes. But later, it's as if it didn't happen. You shift into a reality where it did not happen. The 3D has to give you some sort of timeline to make it believable to you. So, in my example, for my brain to believe it, the 3D had them apologize. But once they moved past it, it literally did not happen, and anything involved has completely changed. Your mind literally disconnects from the reality where the event you did not like happened and connects to a new outcome. Essentially, when you forgive someone or something, to truly forgive is to forget. When you forgive and forget, you shift into another state/reality. Another example of how I have used revision is through changing my grades. In my episode of How I Manifest Perfect Grades, I talk about how I failed an exam, revised it, and it resulted in me retaking the exam and acing it. Revising is like editing an essay. You write your essay and you revise it to make it better. Now, the computer can save your mistakes if you decide that you actually want to keep something in, but the document will look as if it had never had any mistakes, and that's the one you turn in. That's the one that is your true work. That's the one you choose to represent you. You don't throw the mistakes you have made at your face, you learn from them. To recap, when you revise, you literally change the past. The evidence you see immediately after might show you some sort of series of events, but you will see that over time that event actually did not happen. It happened the way you wanted it to. I encourage you to play with revising. You can revise every single night that your day went exactly as you wanted. You can revise events that have happened in your life and revise every single moment to moment. Everything in this world is malleable. If you have used revision before, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your stories. Thank you for listening to Place Prepared Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. You can give a follow to Place Prepared on Instagram for daily manifesting content. Happy manifesting!